Chapter 4. The Nature of Disease, How the Body Heals Itself. From the earliest of times, humans have had various misconceptions as to the cause and nature of disease. But always humans have believed that disease consisted of an entity that invaded or attacked the body. Always humans have regarded disease as some sort of evil entity preying upon them. They have never known just how disease attacks the body. They have just assumed that to be the case. Primitive humans thought that perhaps the evil force was in the form of spirits. Modern humans attribute the evil force to germs and/or viruses, but both concepts are essentially the same. They are founded on the idea that disease is wrong action, and hence must be driven out of the body. This concept unleashed a war against the invading enemy that ever consumes greater and greater human resources. With the birth of the hygienic system, there arose a new view of disease, one that was radically divergent from those which preceded it. This view considers disease to be an intrinsic body force which develops because there is a need for it. Those who formulated this outlook did not speak of disease as attacking the body. They did not speak of the supposed need of ousting an invading enemy. They did not, as did the medical practitioners of the time, speak of vanquishing evil spirits that had unjustly attacked a person. Rather, the hygienists regarded disease as essential to the body action that is constructive and helpful. To the hygienist, disease is right action, developed by the body itself in the best interest of human functions. Therefore, the action was to be cooperated with rather than warred upon. When Dr. Jennings first gave this new conception, it was greeted with much skepticism and condemnation by medical and drugless physicians alike. However, when the practice based upon the concept proved so thoroughly successful, when this new practice gained a record of efficiency not even hoped for by the schools of curing, the skepticism and condemnation, at least among some physicians, disappeared. For they joined in its practice. Thus, a true hygienic movement was born. The former theories of wrong action became demonstrably erroneous. As a hypothesis and doctrine, the evil force concept lost much ground. The hygienic reforms thus instituted caused the norm of health to spurt ahead. Hygienists have called the right action of disease orthopathy, or correct action. The word first coined by Dr. Isaac Jennings to express his observation that nature is always upright, moving in the right direction. Orthopathy is the governing principle of all pathological conditions. It governs the trend which the physiological activities of the body take. This action invariably creates disease when there is need for it. It holds that disease is restorative and healing action, not a malevolent force. Toxemia. It is not, as one might first suppose, bacteria or viruses which create the need for disease. These may exist concomitantly with the disease, but are never causes. Disease in general is based upon impairing morbific burdens and nutrient deficiencies. The concept of the body throwing off toxic burdens or morbic material was called toxemia. Toxins are materials which, when found in the body in sufficient amounts, obstruct body functions and thus impair health. They are synonymous with poisons, waste matter, or any other destructive or congesting material. Toxins vary in the degree of harm they produce. Some may be harmless when found in small quantities, for they are the normal body waste output. But if retained, they constipate and obstruct. Other toxins may be more virulent and produce death if found even in trace amounts. Toxemia is the presence of sufficiently toxic matters in the blood and tissue to interfere with the functioning power of any part of the body. The body-instituted crisis to eliminate this toxic burden is called disease. There is a certain quantity of toxins in the body at all times, even during an optimum state of health. The activity of cells, which includes the assimilation of food as well as their metabolic actions, and the constant building and destruction of new cells, is productive of wastes which are toxic if not eliminated. Under normal conditions, when the mode of living is proper and elimination is efficient and sufficient, the toxic wastes of cellular activity do not collect in amounts sufficient to interfere with body functions. But if elimination is checked, then toxic wastes collect in such amounts as to impair body functions. It is then that the body initiates the crisis born of toxemia. This is what hygienists called disease. The end products of metabolism are considered the chief sources of toxemia, though there are other sources which also deserve mention. One of these is the excessive decomposition of foods due to fermentation and putrefaction in the intestinal tract. This decomposition always produces toxins when unsuitable foods or unphysiologic combinations of foods are eaten. Under adverse conditions, including the presence of highly fermentable and putrescible foods, the intestinal tract becomes a seething cesspool of toxic materials. Then, too, toxins are ingested into the body in forms of drugs, serums, vaccines, impure air and food, etc. Medical treatment is often a major source of toxins. Modern foods often contain toxic substances. The body may eliminate them before they do harm, or they may be absorbed by the blood and interfere with normal body activities. Thus, the body may be overwhelmed by toxic loads, which thus become a source for disease. Also, it must be noted that toxins from impure air enter the lungs and are taken up by the blood and add to the toxic burden. Organic toxemia is given much attention by some hygienists, but it is always secondary to the toxemia, which originates from faulty elimination of the waste products of metabolism, the excessive decomposition of foods in the digestive tract, and the ingestion of toxic matters. Organs which have become overburdened with toxic matters can't function and thus cause the body to institute a crisis. The resulting emergency action of the body to purge the affected organ results in feverish activity. This extraordinary attention to an affected organ is called organic toxemia, actually a little used term. We know of the crisis as an itis or an infection. A toxic crisis is the basis for what we call disease. Closely related to toxemia is enervation, lowered nerve force, also known as nervous exhaustion. If elimination is to function effectively, there must be an adequate supply of nerve force. When nerve force is lowered, the eliminative powers are also lowered. This in turn puts the body behind in its housekeeping chores. Toxic accumulation thus results, which again causes a further reduction in nerve energy. The result is a vicious cycle in which toxic matters progressively accumulate until a state of toxemia exists. A crisis point in which the body disables itself and devotes all its remaining fund of energy to the elimination of the impairing toxic load. Nutrient deficiencies. Vitamin and mineral deficiencies are also closely related to toxemia. A diet containing all the essential elements of nutrition is necessary if the nerves are to be properly fed and function at a high level. Without sufficient amount of needed nutrients, body functions are impaired for want of them, thus giving rise to enervation and toxemia. The body cells cannot adequately dispose of the end products of metabolism if they are not given an adequate supply of nutritive components. If they are malnourished, they become enfeebled and permit end products of their metabolism to be retained. That toxemia occurs during such an event is best known by the fact the so-called deficiency diseases, including anemia and tooth decay, recover far more quickly on a fast than when proper diet is instituted. The deficiencies obviously do disease, a needed friend. It is not toxemia and nutritional deficiencies in themselves which constitute disease. Rather, it is the attempt of the body to correct these conditions, or, if this is impossible, adapt to them that is called disease. The first is usually the case in acute disease. The last is often the case in chronic disease. Acute illness is essentially a progress of toxic elimination. As the toxins are eliminated, assimilation is improved. The elements of foods are utilized more effectively as the body becomes freed from its toxic overload. Along with this increased freedom from toxic materials is a general restorative process. The body attempts to restore body functions to normal when the impairing factors are eliminated. The disease is always a body crisis and is directed in the best interests of itself. Inflammation is typical in most disease. It occurs in those tissues which are irritated by accumulated toxic material. Inflammation is fundamentally a part of the eliminative procedure. It is a violent attempt by the tissue to eliminate the toxins which are interfering with the normal activities. Itis means inflammation. Thus, appendicitis is inflammation of the appendix, tonsillitis is inflammation of the tonsils, bronchitis is inflammation of the bronchial tubes, peritonitis is inflammation of the peritoneum, and colitis is inflammation of the colon. The itis is simply the suffix, which is attached to the name of an organ to indicate that it is inflamed, actually engorged with blood and fluids in a feverish effort to remove toxic burdens. Fever as a general body condition is likewise of a constructive nature. It arises because there is a definite need for it. It is an attempt by the body to eliminate toxins and restore functions to normal. Bacteria. The role of bacteria in the production of disease is a very minor one. Bacteria are never the primary cause. In fact, they usually arise on the scene after the disease has already developed. The general character and toxicity of the various bacteria depend chiefly upon their environment. The most harmless bacteria may become virulent and toxic when placed in certain environments. On the other hand, the most dangerous and virulent bacteria become harmless when placed in a non-toxic environment. The Mocrococcus tritaginus, for instance, has, under laboratory observation, changed into 15 distinct forms when its food supply was changed at periodic intervals. Germs are scavengers. They live upon dead matter. Truly healthy tissue is not subject to so-called bacterial attacks. Only after the cells are poisoned out of existence do bacteria come upon the scene. Millions of healthy people now living harbor the germs of diphtheria, pneumonia, tuberculosis, and other so-called infectious diseases. Likewise, a large percentage of people develop these diseases in complete absence of the germs which supposedly cause them. These facts shake the germ theory of disease causation to its very foundation. We find diseases occurring in the absence of their supposed cause and the supposedly causative germs existing without causing their respective diseases. We have the equivalent of causeless effects and effectless causes. The entire germ theory of disease hinges on the borders of occultism and metaphysics. It is as far divorced from science as is palmistry, astrology, and mystic philosophy. Thus it is that medical minds are more and more gravitating to the virus concept of disease causation. Actually, this too is pure voodooistic ignorance. Even if it were assumed, for the sake of argument, that bacteria cause disease, we could not consider them enemies of life and health. Their action under such conditions could only be that of inciting crises of elimination. In doing this, they would be acting as friends, not enemies. If bacteria hasten elimination, let us have more of them. They would be unlikely to produce disease in the absence of toxemia, and if no toxemia were present, they would cooperate with the body. The body and bacteria live in a symbiotic partnership. Of course, in the presence of a toxic environment, bacteria produce toxins. This is a complicating factor in disease. In this sense, bacteria would be anything but helpful. However, their power of inciting disease in a clean, healthy body is still non-existent. They still could not be considered a primary cause of disease. The hygienic system then rejects the germ theory of disease causation. It bases its practice upon the principle of correct body action in disease. Its aim in all cases of disease is to cooperate with the body in this action. Its aim is to create the conditions under which the body can best conduct its right action. With an understanding of the nature of disease, we must seek to avoid, eradicate, and reject its causes. We must determine the influences and factors of health and cultivate these. If hygiene can succeed in this and make a practical application of its findings, disease will become a thing of the past. Disease will be a friend whom we no longer need. The causes of toxemia are numerous. Fortunately, we do not have to determine them. We need only to adopt our correct human dietary, expose our bodies to the sun as needed, breathe fresh, pure air, get adequate rest and sleep, ingest only pure water, maintain emotional equilibrium. In short, we must observe the essential influences and factors of health. If we carefully cultivate health practices, we, as with animals, will instinctively shun the causes of toxemia, which bring on crises of disease. If we live healthfully, we will enjoy freedom from disease. We will have superb health and what it begets, a long life and prolonged youth.